Vayera. Posach Eliyahu began, Antu Chad, you are one, V'loi b'chushbon, but not in the numerical sense. Antu da'afikas asa tikunim, you're the one who's brought forth the 10 tikunim. What tikunim are, the Alter Rebbe is going to explain. The Havin in Yitzhak, to understand this idea, clearly the tikunim that the Maimah of Eliyahu is referring to are the 10 spheres. But they're called tikunim, things that fix. Tzarich lahaktim. So to understand this, we need to begin first biyo inyan mhus hanefesh, to understand the essence of the soul. Kihini hanefesh mitzad atzmo, nefesh, from its point of view, it is a straightforward, non-descriptive oil, without any divisions between intelligence and emotions. Those aspects of intelligence and emotions, they are things that enclose the soul. The soul has these seichel midas, but they don't represent the essence of what the nefesh is. But because of it, Tanya, now, that which does say in Tanya, shanefesh atzma, that the soul itself, mischalekes seichel midas, does divide itself into seichel and midas, shehem nikraim atzmis hanefesh, they are called the essence of the soul. This is only reference to the thought, speech, and action which flows from the soul. Because they are Navushin, here it means clothes or garments, things which are additionary to the soul, not part of the soul at all. They are completely separated from the essence of the soul. They are in essence like the madrigas of Bia. In the 4 elements of Atzilus, Bria, Yitzir, and Asir, Bia is considered to be separate, whereas Atzilus is still considered to be connected to Atzmas Ein Sof, the essence of Hashem's oil. On this it says, you have prepared lavushin, garments, the inum bia, which refers to those 3 elements of bia. But when you talk about seichel midas, albeit that they are indeed garments, but they're not separate garments. They are akin to the kelim, the vessels, meaning the form that the oil takes, that is in Atzilus, in which case the it and its kelim, its clothes, are really one thing. In comparison to that, they are referred to as atzmas, but they are not truly atzmius. It's not the real essence. You can still differentiate between these kelim of seichel midas and the etzem hanefesh. So they are thus called tikunim, things that, if you like, commandeer or reflect or become the kelim. Nefesh mistakenes or mistaber b'shehem. The nefesh can itself become established and enclose itself in them. It's the same as what the Aramaic translation of the verse that a man may not wear the clothes of a woman. A man must not establish himself in the establishments of a wife. So there you see that lavush is referred to by the translation of a tikkun. In tikkun, so the concept of a tikkun, miloshen tachshit, it's a sort of an ornament, shemiskashit by, that enhances the person, decorates the thing that it is carrying, is being carried by. Or mispal mimenu, it kind of reflects off this. And the wearer becomes united with this ornament. It may as well be part of its own body. This is much the same as the soul and the body of a regular person is. That although the body is merely a garment that encloses the soul, nonetheless, the soul does respond to, is affected by, mimikri haguf, things that happen to the body. If the body was to stick out its finger, Marrakeshes HaNefesh, the soul is aware of this. And similarly, whatever manifests itself in the desire of a person, to do some action, with its limbs, the limbs respond to that will. Take it from a yad, instantaneously. Whenever a person desires to do some action, if he wants to make his feet walk, there's no sort of introductory spread, allowing the thought to somehow make its way from the mind to the foot. Shimkain, were that the case, it'd take a little bit of time. But it doesn't take any time. Not even a moment. As soon as a person wants to move his leg, it moves. The only reason for this is because the body is one thing with the soul. So as the soul wants to move, the body reflects that. And the soul is able to manipulate the body whichever way it wants. As if it was indeed the essence of the body itself. Although the soul body itself is only a garment to the soul, nonetheless it's a garment which becomes united with the soul. And thus, the soul wants to move, the body moves automatically. Similarly, you can understand the same concept with Seichel and Midas, Shel HaNefesh, that belong to the soul. They are only effectively things that establish, that manifest, or enclose whatever the soul is. The soul is able to express itself and enclose itself in this Seichel HaMidas. They become receptacles for whatever the soul wants. And through them the soul is able to affect whatever it wants to do. Much the same way as an axe does whatever the wood chopper wants it to do. You don't have an axe that does something independently of the wood chopper. If you do, you have a problematic axe. So that the soul wants to express a feeling of love, will delve into some understanding. Shekol zeh, or chiyetze b'zeh, that all these examples, anything similar, hurak ulas hanefesh v'hispashtusa, that is only the actions of the soul and its spreading forth, its reflection. She'ein eleh b'ma mimenu l'zulasa, this is only what the soul uses as a way of communicating with something else. Havaleshem said atzma, whether you take the soul independently, that's beyond those forms of expression. It doesn't need any expression. Because the intelligence and the emotions of the soul, they accept changes. Because you're talking about emotions, they don't stay constant. There are ups and downs. For instance, on a long-term basis, you see that a child likes seemingly insignificant things. But the mind, the older it gets, the more settled it becomes. And obviously an adult does not want silly things, it desires more mature things. None of that would be applicable to the essence of the soul, or muhusa, and its muhus. Because the essence, by definition, doesn't change. Essence remains essence. It would not respond to any changes in the events that happened to the body. Because its essence does not truly enclose itself in the body. It's the reflection. So like the light of the sun is what comes to us, but not the sun itself. In the same way, the essence of the soul remains remote. But what its reflection, the way it emanates, that does indeed become involved in and clothed in the body. That's indeed what it spreads itself out through the body, encloses itself in the body. And as a result, they respond to change, as far as the body is concerned. Therefore, these reflections of the soul will in turn become reflexive. They will change in a young person towards in an old person. Similarly, the intelligence and the emotions are only the reflections of the soul and its strengths, its abilities. That spread itself forth through the body. But remain. That's not the essence of the soul. But the soul is able to affect and manifest itself by spreading itself out through these tasks, these talents, and these reflections. Be that as it may, they are still not clothes that are separate from the essence of the soul. Unlike the machshava, thoughts, speech and action, that they are truly not part of the soul, and not even clothes that are directly connected to or enveloped with the soul. They are indeed the light and the strengths which enclose themselves truly with the soul, like any piece of clothing that covers the body. But the seichel and midas are much more closely linked to the essence of the soul. They aren't truly clothes that are different. Mistakenes. They are tikkunim. They are ways of establishing the essence of the soul. They're ways of developing the soul. So the soul is able to develop itself, or misnoi b'hem, and to pride itself, in the same way as an ornament might do. And that is what decorates a person who wears this and makes him look nice. And in a similar way we can understand above, with the 10 spheres of godly emanations, that they will be referred to as tikkunim. Hainu, Chochma, Mides, that's Edus. That's, for instance, the Chochma and its derivatives, and the Mides, the various emotions, which are the products of the mind of the Chochma. The Atzilus of that world, which is the very first stage, immediately after the essence of God, the Iva Gamoichad, and in that environment, both the oil and the Keli is one. But once you get to the next stage of Bia, Bria, and subsequent, they are only clothes, garments, and that's what's meant when we say that God has created clothes for these to envelop themselves. As it says further on, the Eibishter is Chakim, is wise. Pirish Antu, when you say you are, Hainu Oirin Self Chakim, we're talking about the infinite light, that aspect of the Eibishter which is truly beyond any description, but it encloses itself and draws itself down, and it is displayed in the manner of Chochem. In the same vein as the place where you see God's greatness, so too you can see His humility, that He's able to draw down these things to a level that becomes somewhat describable. But that's not wisdom in what we know as wisdom. But we still refer to Him as wise, or the source of wisdom, because He is the source from where the wisdom comes from. And because it's from this that wisdom that derives itself, not something else. But Bia, in the lower levels of Olam, is known as Bia. Even though there's no describing, there's an absolute infinite gap between that and Chachma de Bria, an even greater gap once you go down further to the level of Asiya. And to refer to these, therefore, as Chakim, because of this connection, it's gone a long way. But it's perhaps best understood in an anthropomorphic way. You do not have a blade of grass that doesn't have, as the Talmudic expression continues, doesn't have a divine angel or muzzle that tells it grow. And above that there's something high, and so on. And you know, a very physical apple, you see that an apple has a sweetness to it, and when a person eats it, he tastes it. Are you then suggesting that the ability to make things grow, which lies within the earth, has any taste, any sweetness there? Go look the earth, you'll not find any sweetness. You taste as many clods as you want, it won't be sweet. Pshita, the muzzle, and it's obvious therefore that the muzzle that tells the grass to grow, is above and beyond what the grass itself is, yet nevertheless there is a link. The idea can be translated as follows, that sweetness comes from chesed, which is kindness, because the taste is something that is kind to you, easy to accept. And bitterness stems from a level called gvura, which is strength or severity, and hence something that's bitter is harsh for you to taste. And we're not discussing whether the food is good or bad. In both cases, they could be either. So they are more divine ideas, except that in this chain effect and the order of the way things descend from one level to the next, Madrigas of the various levels, from one level to another level, Niskashmu, they become further solidified, they become more physicalized. So that you eventually get from something which starts out as divine chesed, you end up with something which we call sweetness. And although that's completely non-related to the concept of chesed, it is above and beyond and a million miles away from its source. It's from it. That is its source. And it bears some resemblance to whatever that Madriga was in Shamayim, in the heavenly spheres, except that has been translated to something more physical. So the concept of chesed now becomes something that we conceive as sweet. And you can see there are many forms of sweetness in the spiritual. For instance, the pleasure when a person understands something. There's a certain divine sweetness to that. That's also sweet. Similarly, the sweetness that comes from a song. That stems from the voice, emanates from the heart, which is the level of emotion. Therefore, in many descents and in clothing, that becomes something which is genuinely physically sweet, albeit that there's a great disparity between what it started out as and what it is now. Starts out as chesed, which is something entirely spiritual and divine, and ends up something which is sweet, that is very physical, only non-divine. The similar thing you'd find with the concepts of wisdom. There are higher and higher things, all in the same vein, with much higher ideas. And even though the Chochmah which is in the world of Bria, the second of our four worlds, is of no comparison, and this bears no resemblance to the essence of Chochmah as it appears in the low level of Asiya. Nonetheless, it is still the source, the root from whence that Chochmah comes. Being that is the source from which the Chochmah of Asiya is able to come down and be revealed. The revealed Chochmah in Asiya has its roots in the Chochmah of Bria, even though Bria and Asiya are far removed from each other. The same thing is with the Chochmah of Tzirus. If yes, even though it is indeed Chochmah, but it's not the Chochmah that you would recognize. It is nevertheless a source of the source of the source, which eventually takes you back to Chochmah Tzirus. Down in the lower levels, that appears as wisdom that we can understand. That means that God has enclosed himself in wisdom. Chochmah itself comes from a level that is, to the person who receives it, it appears like it's come from the middle of nowhere, pure invention, something from nothing. And that is the humility of the Almighty, blessed be He. That is really, He's lowering Himself as far as He's concerned. That is somewhat the meaning of the word Atzilus, Shehuloshin Yerida Vahashpala. But that suggests a descent, a lowering of himself. In the upper spiritual divine levels, to lower himself, as if he is in a lower, as if he is indeed that lower form of wisdom. You find that word being used when Moshe was looking for a replacement leader, and the Eibishter tells him to find this, to establish a group known as the Shivim Zkenim, and tells him to give of his spirit unto these leaders, even though these leaders were nothing like Moses. Nevertheless, the Eibishter says, that I will shave off from your spirit the Gabi Moshe as far as he is. As he had previously said when complaining about the pressures on him from the people, in being a rabbi has a lot of pressures to it, and Moshe was no exception. And he says, they want meat. When am I going to find meat? That he was on a very elevated level, and really was unable to get involved in going, looking, finding the physical meat, which is what the Jewish people complained they didn't have and they wanted. Therefore the Eibishter said to him, so get together 70 people, that are at a level slightly lower, and for them it won't be such a big problem to go find meat. That they shouldn't be totally physicalized and completely divorced from who you are. But so I will shave off from the spirit. I will take something of your spirit, which is upon you, and put it on them. But it's something, not all of your spirit. Because that is, I'm going to bring down and draw to a lower level that the sort of person who you are, the sort of holiness which hovers over you, that will be indeed lower than your level, and then I'll put it on them. There will be a sustenance, a spiritual and divine sustenance to them from your level, but they will be unable to arise to be your level of Moshe Rabbeinu. So I'm taking your level and drawing it down to them, which means that it will be your level but drawn down to theirs. So it won't be quite as illustrious. A similar idea, when we use the word Atzilus, V'atzalti, they're the same root. When we refer to Atzilus, we are saying effectively the same idea. That it's taking something divine and bringing it down to a lower level. This establish himself so that the divine infinite light can somehow enclose itself in Chokhmah, which is at a lower level. And that is why the 10 emanations of Atzilus are referred to as 10 establishments. Because they are close to the infinite oil, but not its essence, because it is at a lower level. Nevertheless, they're not distinct clothes, that is to say, separate from the essence, But they are indeed ways that the soul establishes itself, because he and his kamoi, his kalim, his bones, effectively are one, which is not quite what the situation is when you get to the levels of Bia, as we mentioned before. This is the first two Osius of the first Maimon Pashas Vayera in Torah Or.